Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome everyone. Today we're going to be continuing with part 2 of the chat room. This is the story of Mark and John. Now, we had last left off, Mark had accompanied John to a dentist appointment under the guise that he wanted to hang out, but in reality he was on a secret mission with Janice to just be his bodyguard. And when he returned home, Janice would have an email for him saying that he passed and that they were going to start doing everything to push forward his training to work for MI6. Janice would actually message Mark later on and tell him that the plans had changed and they had a secret mission that only he could do because he was the closest person to James Bell, aka John. They would inform him that he had a brain tumor and it was fatal, and they needed him to actually assassinate him because if anyone were to sit and take his body, they could actually use his face to get the safe that was at the bottom of the Atlantic. There she would give him his direction that he would go into a shop and buy a very large hunting knife and would accompany John to a dark alley somewhere. But at any point, if he had gotten a message that had a series of numbers, it was an abort code, meaning to abort the mission. So Mark would accompany John one day and they walked down a dark alley, and the entire time he was looking at his phone hoping that it would be an abort code, but he never got one. And eventually he had gotten to a dark alley and he had pressed John up against the wall and he pulled out his hunting knife and he would look at him and say, "I love you, I'm sorry," and begin stabbing him in the chest. After he had gone and stabbed John, he would drop the knife and actually walk over to a payphone and call 911 and ask for an ambulance to go to the certain area where he was. But the stabbing actually did not kill John, and he was actually alive when the medics arrived. And they asked how he had gotten his state and who had done this to him, and he would tell them Mark did, to which the authorities would go and arrest Mark. At the trial hearing, Mark would sit down and prepare for the next news because Janice was nowhere to be found as she said she would when he had done his mission. So therefore he realized that this was a hoax. And before the court could actually get started, John would come in out of the hospital and he would stand up and look at the judge and tell the judge that he had something to confess. John would go and tell the entire courts that the only person being honest in this entire situation and scenario was actually Mark. He would go and say that everyone that Mark had been talking to in the past year was him. John had actually gone and fabricated and created over 168 different profiles on the internet, even creating the chat room that Mark was a part of. Even his girlfriend Rachel was John, that he had created online because he wanted to have Mark love him for him. And that is why every time they went to meet, it never happened. And because it was going a certain way and Mark was so in love with Rachel, he decided to kill her off by creating a storyline with the stalker Kevin. Even the government lady Janice was someone that John had created. Not only Mark, but even the judge in the entire courtroom were completely stunned. The judge said this was the most insane case he had ever heard in the years that he had been in office. He would look at Mark and tell him that because of everything, he would give him a 3-year probation from computers and online, and he was restricted from going online, using computers, etc. And he would turn at John and say the same thing, that he had a 3-year ban from going on computers online, and they both were completely restricted from going on any chat rooms. The judge would then later say that there was a restraining order and a no contact order between the both of them to where they both were not able to sit there in contact. The case was so insane that there was a lot of rules and regulations set in place that goes for social media in the UK. But it definitely goes to say sometimes you have to be careful on the people you talk to online, because not everything is what it seems. Mark would end before leaving the courtroom. It would be stated that he was completely stunned that he had believed such a fabricated lie. He would look at the judge and say, "I've been such a fool." John would later go and tell the courts that he had just gotten sick of living a lie for so long, and he had made plans to make an abort code during the time of the stabbing. But at that time, he had just decided that Mark deserved much better than he was giving him, and decided that he would actually kill himself through this act. This will definitely go down, in my opinion, as the craziest chat room story I've ever heard.